All right, and we are now officially recording. So again, welcome everyone to our webinar series, Navigating Your Science Career Journey for Environmental Science and Geoscience Students. My name is Alyssa Laskowski, and I work on SNHU's Career Services team, and I will be your host along with my colleague Tyra to walk you through today's panel presentation. So as I've stated before, but just wanted to go over some general housekeeping rules. So all of those in the audience today, your microphones have been muted. And once again, students are encouraged to stay on camera for the duration of the panel presentation, but by no means is that required. You can definitely turn off your cameras if you prefer. So let's go ahead and get started. So your experience at SNHU is very important to us. It is our policy and practice to create an inclusive and accessible learning environment. If there are aspects of this presentation design or delivery that present barriers to accessibility, please notify the appropriate accessibility centers that are listed here on the screen. So once again, welcome. I'd like to take a moment now, turn the microphone over to my co-host Tyra to say hello and introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So excited for you all to be here. My name is Tyra Davey. I'm your Associate Dean for the Geoscience and Environmental Science programs here at SNHU. Thanks so much for joining tonight.
Thanks, Tyra. So again, those who are in the audience joining us this evening, please feel free to continue to say hello in the chat box, either where you're joining us from and your major. We'd love to hear from you. So where are we headed this evening? So today we'll start by introducing our panelists and asking them a series of preset panel questions. And then afterwards, we will open it up to Q&A from the student audience. So again, reminder, this webinar is recorded, so students are not required to take any notes, but of course you are welcome to do so. All attendees will receive a follow-up email with all the links to the resources that we do discuss today, as well as a link to this particular recording. So just in order to get those emailed resources, we do ask that everyone here make sure they officially have registered for this webinar if you haven't yet already. And so you can actually register online through My SNHU, and Tyra has added that link into the chat box for you. Again, reminder, your microphones have been muted and you can choose to turn your cameras on or off. And we do encourage you to keep that camera on for, again, a more engaging experience. And so we will have time for that Q&A at the very end. So if you please wait to add your questions into the chat box until we get to that portion, we'll be able to then unmute those who want to ask their questions aloud, or we can read them aloud for you. So let's get into it and let's introduce our panelists. So joining us today are two representatives from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in the Pacific Southwest Region 9, which implements and enforces federal environmental laws in Arizona, California, Hawaii, Nevada, the Pacific Islands, and 148 tribal nations. So Romy is Remedial Project Manager in the Superfund Division and serves as a co-special emphasis program manager for the Women in Science and Engineering and the Federal Women's Program. Romy works on Superfund Sites. Superfund Sites is a national environmental program set up in 1980 to address hazardous waste sites that threaten public health and the environment. In her day-to-day role, she helps to facilitate the cleanup of Superfund sites and inform residents and stakeholders about the cleanup actions taking place at the site in their area. Prior to her work as an RPM, Romy spent time working in the office of the Regional Administrator's Office, where she was able to work on many different large-scale events and hone her skills as a multitasker and a community involvement coordinator, where she helped residents better understand the contaminants in their community. Romy has a bachelor's degree in public administration from California State University and a second bachelor's degree in environmental science with a concentration in natural resources and conservation from SNHU. And Augie is Remedial Project Manager with EPA Region 9's Superfund and Emergency Management Division. He oversees the cleanup and remediation of multiple Superfund sites across California. He started his EPA career as a Pathways intern and is now currently working on the Purity Oil Inc. Superfund site, Frontier Fertilizer Superfund site, and is part of the remediation team that is working on the San Fernando Valley remediation with a focus on North Hollywood. Augie holds a bachelor's degree in environmental science from San Francisco State University. And Emily is currently a stormwater program analyst in the city of Manassas in Virginia, where she works on her MS4 program educating the public about stormwater management, illicit discharge investigations, dry weather screening, and water quality sampling, pre and post construction best management practices, and good housekeeping procedures for city employees regarding their stormwater. She graduated from SNHU in May of 2023 with a degree in geosciences. And so now I'll turn it over to Tyra to kick us off.
Thanks so much, Alyssa, and thank you to our panelists. I'll thank you a few times today. So we have a few questions that we'd love to ask and just hear about your journey since graduation related to coming out of SNHU and what that's really looked like. So the first question I'll ask is to Emily, and tell us a little bit about what your career journey has looked like since graduating. I know it's been fairly recently, but excited to hear a little bit more.
Yeah, so it has not been too terribly long, but I'll probably go into it a little bit more with the next question. But yeah, once I graduated, I had an internship with Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District. So I did that from April through August, and then mid-August, I got the job at the city of Manassas. So I've been there ever since, and I've been loving it. There's a lot more to stormwater than I realized, so I've been learning a lot, getting certified in different things. It's been a lot of fun, so I'm excited to tell you guys more.
Absolutely. And while we've got you on the mic, feel free to tell us, kind of what your experience was like with landing this job and how your experience both at SNHU and with your internship had really kind of led to that.
Yeah, so around October of 2022, I guess, I realized I was going to be finishing SNHU in about 6 months. So I was like, oh, I should probably start looking for a job. So I thought I was actually going to go more towards geology. My degree is just in geoscience, but I was thinking geology, and I had actually reached out to a professor at George Mason about their structural geology master's program. But long story short, I ended up not doing that. Around February, I decided that wasn't for me. So I started back to the drawing board, and I had reached out, to career services and everything, and had gotten ideas from them about what else could potentially be out there. And I came upon soil and water conservation districts while doing some of the research and reached out to them, and they created an entire internship for me that summer. So that was great. So I jumped right into that, as I was finishing up SNHU, and that really opened the door then to stormwater for me and discovering that whole avenue. So that's then when I started applying for more stormwater positions, and then got the job at the city of Manassas, where I've been since.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing, Emily. And I'll pass the same questions to Romy. If you can tell us a little bit about what your journeys looked like since you've graduated from SNHU, and how you landed the current position that you're at right now.
So thank you for that great question. I was fortunate enough to already be within the EPA family prior to my start at SNHU. I was as a community involvement coordinator working to explain hazardous chemicals of concern to residents, that they had no responsibility for their placement in their communities, to the extent possible. That permitted me to kind of an easier step into trying to figure out what I wanted. Partially because I started like Augie, I started off as an intern during my first degree. And I was fortunate enough to kind of get my footing. And one of the things that I was told on my first week was a career at EPA is going to be a career where you're going to visually see the changes you make. And it's going to be one where there's going to be very few days where you're not going to learn something. And to this day, that still kind of holds true. I see the changes that are being implemented in my time at EPA so far. And I have been had the luxury of continuing to learn. And as part of that effort, I wanted to kind of branch into a better understanding of the cleanup process. So I applied for a remedial project manager role, cleaning up Superfund sites, which goes in parallel with a community involvement coordinator to a certain degree. As a community involvement coordinator, my priority was the community, and as an RPM, the community is still my priority, but it was also moving the cleanup status of the site you're working on, moving it ahead. And I have been in this position almost a year now. So I've had a little bit of a gradual change in my career stance since leaving SNHU.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Romy. And now I'll ask you kind of a question about some of the skills that you gained while you were at SNHU, and how have you seen that translate into your current job, or just even that kind of mindset, like you said, about kind of continuous learning. And I'll pass that to Romy first.
For one, a lot of the instructors that instructed me when I was at SNHU came from across the nation, and they were able to share their knowledge from their own day-to-day jobs, be it as a professor or be it as a career staff person. And they were able to kind of share some of those insights into what aspects of what they were teaching played a greater role than what you think. And I truly appreciated that because it allowed me not only to get a better understanding of the subject at hand, but it also allowed me the focus to be able to understand how certain tasks or certain skills that I was learning in their courses were going to help me going forward. And to date, well, I wish that I could have learned to be a speed reader while I was at SNHU, or actually in my life up to this point. The skills that I did gain while at SNHU and in my course load have helped me to better understand some of the technical jargon that's being used, and also some of the out of the box concepts that I'm now trying to push through in to certain aspects.
Excellent. Thank you. And if we have any instructors on the call this evening, big shout out to you all. Thank you so much, Romy. And the same question goes to Emily. Coming out of the geoscience degree, what are some things that you learned at SNHU that you're able to apply in the workforce today?
Yeah, so I think all the projects that we had, I actually really appreciated then going into the field, because it's so much more, at least with my job, it's a lot more project based. And it's there's just constantly projects coming, so it's a lot of like time management as well, and project management with figuring out what's most important, what do you need to get done when, and everything like that. So I felt like really prepared from SNHU then going into the workforce, because I think just about all of my classes were all project based. So I thought that was really beneficial and helpful, and definitely made me more confident than going into the job.
Excellent. Yeah, a lot of time management when there's no one there right there to kind of push you along. So self-starter definitely sounds like a good skill set going into the workforce. Thank you so much, Emily.
You're welcome.
And what resources you had mentioned about SNHU Career Services, Emily? Did you use as you were navigating your career interests, and how did you interact with career services? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, so I reached out to them originally when I was thinking about going towards the geology degree, and they helped me write a CV, and that was super helpful just in general too. But then I went back for actual like resume help and everything, and they helped me not only build like a great resume, but also like suggested like an online website where I could post all my projects and everything and have that connected to my LinkedIn. And they also were just really helpful because I was new to geoscience. This is like a second career for me. So they were very helpful in like presenting different ideas and like what I could be applying for, and different jobs out there that I might not have ever thought about. And just even like keywords that I could like type in to find jobs. So career services definitely helped me like in every way possible.
Excellent. That's so great to hear. I'm sure Alyssa is full of excitement to hear all of that, and how much it's been able to help. That's really great. And in terms of networking, you had mentioned about kind of, exploring the field and all the things that you've learned, and some of the trainings and things like that you've been able to do in your current position. How has networking helped you navigate all of that? And what have been kind of some of the connections that you've made along the way?
Yeah, so I think also going back to the professors definitely helped as well with giving me ideas as to like who to reach out to and everything like that. I would ask my professors, just what their journeys were like. And I think it's also great that SNHU, everyone's from everywhere. So there's so many different like ideas and people out there to help you. But yeah, I ended up, I can't remember exactly how, but once I found soil and water conservation districts, reaching out to them, they got back to me super fast. But LinkedIn also, I remember reaching out to many people in the field just in general, again, to just get ideas and what journeys were like out there. Because there's really no like one path, especially in geoscience or science in general. So there's definitely different ways to get connected out there. But LinkedIn definitely helped like on a base level, I feel like. And then from there, yeah, reaching out to then people who are higher up maybe in companies or things like that. And then yeah, I would just advise like don't be afraid or anything. Like the worst they can do is ignore you, but the best that happens is they respond and things happen. So because I also found a lot of the times that people, even if they like maybe didn't have a job or didn't have anything available right then, like they might connect you with someone else who did. So I definitely think reaching out to anyone in the field, like more so than not, people are willing to help you and want to help you. So don't be afraid to reach out.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And for everyone who's attending tonight, you're already networking and getting connected with others. Emily's LinkedIn profile is pretty sharp. So if you have a chance to check it out and get connected with her, she's got everything really nicely put together on there. And then back to you, Romy. We have, a number of resources here at SNHU. I know that you were already connected with the EPA before kind of starting. What's that really looked like for you in terms of, either using SNHU resources or networking across the industry?
So I was able to network a lot through, like Emily said, LinkedIn. I was able to connect through that. I was able to participate and connect to other instructors, LinkedIn, SNHU's page, which was helpful in letting me know what career opportunities were available in different career fields if I chose to jump out of the federal field. Um, it also allowed me to connect with other organizations as well as the honor society that I was part of. So all of them allowed for different networking availabilities. And as Emily said, a lot of people are just willing to help if you are willing to ask. So.
Excellent. Great advice. Thank you so much, Romy. It's really interesting to hear kind of, both of your career paths and how you've navigated those, and all the tips that you have for along the way. So that is going to shift us now more into kind of guest question mode. So Alyssa, I'm going to pass it back to you. She's going to ask Romy and Augie a few more questions, and then we'll open it back up to Q&A for you all folks to jump in.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyra. And thank you, Romy and Emily, for giving some of that really helpful and insightful, background about, again, where you came from SNHU and how it's really helped you along your journey. So thank you for sharing. So these questions coming up here, again, really are open to all of you, to be honest, and Augie, you too. But I think the first question I want to dive in for us, and I'm going to jump around here because I think some of you guys already answered some of these questions that we had sent. But I actually want to turn it over to Augie, shine the spotlight on him for a second, to talk a little bit more about the Pathways program as a former EPA intern. Just hope you could shed some light on kind of what your experience was like in navigating that program, applying for that program, and just really any insights or advice you have for the students in the audience today who might be looking to consider being an intern in the Pathways program.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Okay, good. So yeah, absolutely. One of the things I want to at least say is, for the majority of the students, are we sitting at like juniors, seniors, graduates, or like we have some underclassmen, like freshmen, sophomores? What's the spread? Is it just a bunch of different kind?
I think we got a mixed group, but everyone feel free to type in your year into the chat box. I see someone mentioned they're junior, freshman, senior. So yeah, okay, I think we've got a good mix of everybody.
Outstanding. All right, so I'm gonna use Emilianne Dugan as an example. So you have only 7 months left. That's going to pretty much preclude you from an entire half of the Pathways internship program. Same thing for Jesse. So there are two different types of Pathways internship. There is the one where you do go to while going to school, and then there's the recent grad program. So if you look on the notices that are put out, if you go for recent grad, that's for late seniors and people who've already graduated within 2 years of getting their degree. For the Pathways internship program that I actually went through, that was while I was going to school in my late junior to senior year. Navigating it is an administrative trial, but you have people that are inside the organization who are very much committed to ensuring that you become a full-time employee. So the cool part about the Pathways internship is it's not just a throw you to the wolves situation. You are guided through almost every step of the process to eventually become a full-time employee, which is effectively automatic if you do well. There is an hours requirement to the one that I graduated through. So for my late seniors, this does not apply to you. Okay, so for my individuals who are going to college, you will be put into a program or a plan that's going to fit to your degree path. And I know that most people here are science oriented, like STEM, right? So mostly you're going to have a mix between physical and life sciences, or is it just specifically environmental science here?
Yeah, mostly predominantly environmental science and geosciences are those folks in the audience this evening.
You have no idea how much that makes me happy. So the good thing is that physical scientists and life scientists are the biggest pool in which we pull interns for. We have a whole other subsect of interns that come from the administrative field, which is actually for all of the support systems that are required to get the EPA. So that's like all of my computer science guys and gals. That's for all of my administrators. That's for all of my people who like math, which is not me. So all of those different positions are definitely open within the administrative bracket. So when I'm talking to my life scientists and my physical scientists, my engineers, those all fall under those two brackets. And you don't know how happy I am to hear that I have an entire cadre of environmental scientists, future environmental scientists, or environmentally minded individuals, because that's the people that we need to replace people like me who will eventually be leaving the workforce, and we need that fresh blood. Now, what that means is that once we get you into the Pathways internship program, you have to do well in school and graduate. If you do not get your degree, do not prove that you're a full-time student, nor do you have a high enough GPA, you will lose your spot within the program. The flip side of that, if you get above a 3.4 GPA, you can waive up to half the hour requirements. So instead of needing over 600 hours, you need 320 hours of work at the EPA to then immediately transition into a full-time position at graduation. 1 month after graduation, most likely. So like, as an example, we have Leticia, who has a GPA of 3.98. That's an incredibly high GPA. That would make it so that you can waive 320 required hours out of the program so that you can essentially meet your goals far faster. I also waived 300 hours off of my requirement, but I had far more than that anyway, because I actually went through the program in the middle of COVID, which was a challenge to say the least. Let's see. Now, my recent grads is an entirely separate program within the Pathways internship programs umbrella. So with that, you have a program that lasts for about a year. You have a development plan that is put forth with your manager, your supervisor who's going to hire you, and a mentor that's chosen by the agency. And from there, you just transition right after that year. So it's a year program. You do well, you don't, you want to continue, your supervisor agrees, bam, you become a full-time employee. So the Pathways Internship Program for the people that are going to college is a little bit more complicated, requires some hours and a lot of communication between you and your supervisor. And then you will be converted at the time that you graduate, compared to the recent grad program where it takes about a year. You meet the requirements of the program, you get a mentor, you become a full-time employee at the end of that year. So quick question, but kind of complicated answer. And I hope I met that answer threshold for you. If you have a very specific question about what happens within the Pathways Internship Program, I can answer that as well. I just don't want to take up too much of your time for that aspect. Now, I think a really important thing is understanding how to apply for Pathways Internship and how to interface with USA Jobs to get within the federal service in general. So I think that's a really, really heavy thing to focus on in the near to far future. Did I answer your guys' question?
Augie, you knocked it out of the park. That was awesome.
Nailed
Thank you
it.
for and I'm sure during the Q&A portion, some of those questions will come up. So we'll keep moving forward on those. But thank you for sharing that. I did also pop into the chat for anyone who's interested. There's tons of fabulous information on the EPA's website about their 2 different pathways programs. There's a plethora of resources as well about applying on USA Jobs, how to get that resume together. So again, we'll be sure to share those resources for all attendees soon. But feel free to take a look at that. And thank you, Augie, for your quick insight. Similar question, but with a little bit of a twist. So this is open to really anyone, any of our panelists are welcome to answer. But let's say hypothetically, we have students who may not be able to dedicate the time to complete maybe a more traditional internship program or participate in the Pathways program. What advice would you give to that particular individual or these students in that situation to gain experience or to make those vital connections so that they can break into the industry? What advice would you give in that scenario? And I'll open anyone, we can just unmute and we'll do popcorn style.
Interesting question. Is this a specific individual, like is it a specific population? Or is it just like generalistic? People have a lot of things going on. They don't have a lot of time.
More general, most of our students, I'd say at SNHU are fit more in the non-traditional category. So they might be working full-time already, or they might be full-time parents or full-time caregivers. So sometimes not able to dedicate the time or resources to a full-on in-depth program. So if there's any other insights, what are some other ways that you think about your own career journey as well? Like what were some of the things that you did to gain some experience if in that situation, maybe a traditional internship program was just not in the cards?
Interesting. There's a couple.
Anyone at it.
Yeah, there's a couple of options. My favorite one is investing in your faculty. And this will be my only contribution before I make Romy answer for the rest. But investing in your faculty and ensuring that they know who you are and you know who they are, and having them be part of your educational and future journey, especially if you require that support. Your faculty are essentially the gate wardens to your specialty. So being able to have a mentor within the educational block and have that personal relationship is incredibly rewarding in terms of even knowing about different avenues of approach to specialists in your field. And just like you said earlier, how like the worst they can do is ignore you. It's kind of the same principle, but most faculty are really into helping the students that show that they care and show that they are into developing that relationship, because they're people too. So I would say for me, one that really got me through a very difficult time where I did not have access to people within the professional workforce in my field. I glommed onto a professor and made them essentially my best friend, and then made sure that I could then use that as a way of developing that relationship future professionally. So I think that's a good way of approaching them. And then popcorn to Romy.
Thanks, Augie. I would say definitely faculty helps. But I would also try to see your neighborhood. There might be a nonprofit group that is trying to do community work or research. It might not be so intensive as in you have to do an 8-hour job. It might be more of, hey, we need somebody to help fill out grant forms, or we might need somebody to help um, get boots on the ground of like counting how many cars are coming down the street, or there's so many different variations. It's usually termed citizen science, but that also helps connect your network and it helps it expand. So, and it would reduce, in some cases, the amount of time necessary for you to extend past. And some of these community groups, I saw one of our participants is a stay-at-home mom. Some of these community groups, they invest in their youth, and so they actually do have a youth aspect built into their programs already. So that might be an alternative that would be welcome, or another option. And now I'm popcorning to Emily.
Thanks. So yeah, I agree with everything that was already said. I guess just to add my own little bit, so I nannied the whole time I was at SNHU. And towards the end, I was like, oh, I don't have any like geoscience experience to really put on my resume. So when I reached out to Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District, it was an unpaid internship. So I did still nanny that whole time through the summer as well. So I was very busy, but it was definitely worth it in the end, and getting all of that experience. But like Rami said, there's a lot of different groups out there who do have different experiences that you can have and utilize and add to your resume and everything like that then. So definitely just kind of goes back to networking though, and just seeing what's out there. But there's definitely a lot of groups that will be there to help add to your resume.
Thank you guys for sharing that insight. We'll have time for about one more question or so, and this could, again, everyone can kind of get a chance to answer, and then we'll open it up to Q&A from the audience. So one of the last questions I have is, in your opinion, what level of maybe either training or maybe certifications or skill sets, both kind of hard and soft skills, do you think students need to enter into the environmental science or geoscience field? And I'll kick it back to Emily to start this one off, if that's all right.
Sure. So I think really the biggest thing, at least for what I've experienced so far, is definitely that time management, project management. But yeah, I think those would be the biggest ones. Again, I don't have like too much experience, but that's definitely been so huge in my life and with what I do and everything. There's a lot of like new projects coming up, but also dealing with other things that might come in. So knowing how to manage your time well and get through the project still was huge and critical. Should I popcorn it or?
Go for it.
Okay. I'll popcorn it to Rami.
Thanks, Emily. I would say time management is a big one. Also, the ability to multitask, because as evident in many of the careers that you will be jumping into, you're going to be having to potentially maneuver 2 different tasks at the same time as a common habit. So, what better time to try to start multitasking, or at least train your mind to be able to multitask than while in college? At least it gives you a little bit of a footing, because you would be amazed at how hard it is or can be to be able to try to focus on a task with your email beeping at you every like so often, or with the phone calls. It could be just like daily life just happening, but the ability to multitask definitely helps. And it helps make sure that your projects don't get off the rails. And it keeps making them move further along. Augie?
So they're going to talk about productivity. I'm going to talk about science. Do a water class for the love of all that is holy. Because I wish I did. The groundwater and understanding groundwater, hydrogeology, and bioclimatology is one of the most bang for your buck class archetypes that I could probably offer you. And you have no idea how hard I have to rely on my support staff to fill the gaps in my knowledge base when it comes to hydrogeology and understanding how water runs through our environment. It's incredibly important when you talk about remediation. It applies to all the different sites. When we're talking about Superfund specifically, and it applies to the Clean Water Act, which affects the entire country. So I understand that you are all East Coast, or not you all, because there is such a thing as telelearning, but what I mean by that is that this is more East Coast focused. But here in California, water is a main concern across all of my sites and always will be. So that's representative for the entire country. So if I'm going to suggest things about science-minded things, it's going to be those listings, those course listings. Another good one is if you can get into an engineering class so you can understand the basic concepts. That's going to help you in regards to like structural engineering, things like that. But don't do that if it has nothing to do with your degree. Get graduated so you can start doing professional work development. And then I popcorn to like you guys, I guess.
Yeah, you got it. Back to me. Thanks, Augie. And thank you guys for all the insight. That is really, really helpful. So at this point, because I know we roughly have about 15 minutes before we conclude, I want to make sure we give our student audience some time for their open Q&A. So we'll go ahead and kick that off. So for all of those in the audience today, there are two ways that you can ask your question. The first, you can just go ahead and pop it right into the chat box, and we will actually read it aloud for you. Second option is you can just type into the chat that you personally would like to be unmuted so that you can ask your question aloud, and we will make sure to unmute your button for you. So at this point, leave it open to the student audience. If you'd like to go ahead and ask your questions, ask away. This is your time and space. So again, feel free to utilize that chat box, and we'll let you all take the reins from here. So again, feel free to pop your questions into the chat, and we'll take care of it from here.
I have one note, if I could.
Go for it. We'll wait for those questions to come on in.
Yeah, I am very much open to student communication, so I'll provide my contact details, and we can, if you find that you have follow-up questions or you don't feel comfortable in posting your questions in an open forum and want to have them on a one-on-one basis, I'm fully open to that. It's not something that is required of us to do, so I'll allow Alyssa to release my contact information to the student group so that I could contact you in the future if necessary and up to your comfortability. And I can give you some more information or less depending upon your needs. I just want to put that out there that the support doesn't end at this webinar. The support will end when you get hired.
Thank you, Aubrey, for volunteering, offering that. I was able to add everyone's LinkedIn profiles into the chat box, but I'll make sure those are included. And Augie, I'll definitely add your email. So Emily and Romy, if that is open for all of you as well, I'm happy to add your emails if that's okay with you all.
I am good with you sharing my email as well.
I am too.
Perfect. All right. Well, I see some of the questions coming through, so I'm going to go ahead and read the first one. This is for Romy and Augie. Does the EPA offer any remote or work from home careers?
Ironically, it does to a certain extent now.
Mhm.
I will tell you that Augies in my field are not 100% remote. But I have the pleasure right now of only having to go into the office once a week. Um, other there's other career fields that are that can be 100% remote, but unfortunately for the roles that Augie and I are in, we do still have to report into the office. Augie, do you have something to add on that?
Just a clarification, it's twice per pay period, so you can
Yeah.
do 2 days in a week and then you could skip the next week. That's just it's a very flexible system, and it is also and just for the understanding, once you become an employee with EPA, if you're in the science field, you are automatically enrolled in the union. So the union, this is a union supported measure to have this telework. Now, we can't be fully remote because we also have to go and do site work, which is, and Rami has been all over California. I've been all over California. Somehow we found ourselves in the same plane meeting going to Southern California, completely unplanned. So you can try your you can do a lot of this work telework, but there will be some consideration to both site work and coming into the office for most positions.
I can tell you right now. Last Thursday I came back from Maui. I was working on the 2023 filed wildfire response. So, um, and my work, my project on in California did not stop moving while I was doing that work. They just kind of came across and went. I was having to manage both. Um, so that is one of the things that you kind of have ability to do. Also, with an agency as EPA, for some weird reason, 2023 had a lot of emergencies. Um, and so I was sent to East Palestine, Ohio. I worked remotely for Guam's typhoon response, and I did multiple deployments to the Maui fires. So it is not only there is opportunities beyond your scope or beyond your job that allow you to additionally serve your community if you do so choose to. And yes, it is kind of weird that, Augie and I, he's place based in San Francisco, I'm in LA, and occasionally we're on the same planes going to the same direction, which is totally random for an agency that has about, I want to say, probably 10,000 employees nationwide. I know for Region 9, which is where we're both from, it covers California, um, Nevada, Arizona, Hawaii, Guam, Micronesia, and American Samoa. So we do have quite a big range of communities that we serve.
Thank you guys for answering that question. Appreciate all that helpful insight. I'm going to go ahead and let David ask his question aloud. So Tyra, would you mind unmuting David Broussard for us so he can go ahead and ask his question for Emily?
Sure thing. All right,
Hey
David,
there.
you should be able to. Oh, perfect. We've got you.
Yes, thanks for that. So my question was just to ask Emily if your job involves a lot of hydrology. It seems like it would. And then also where you're in geoscience and you didn't specifically major in just hydrology, do you find yourself still like learning while you're there? Do you still take classes or learn on your own time? Or is it like learning in the work environment itself?
Yeah, good question. So it's actually, I feel like not as like it's not too much hydrology. It's definitely kind of more government, if that makes any sense. But um, I actually had to get 4 certifications within my first year. So I just finished those actually, but they were with DEQ, and they were more focused on erosion and sediment control and stormwater management. but that kind of had more to do with like construction sites, and that like during and post construction. But I am still constantly learning. I think I'll just be continuously learning, honestly, in this job. There's so much to learn and everything, but it's kind of more actually not. I mean, there is still science in it for sure. Like I'm going out tomorrow all day to get water quality samples and everything like that. Um, but it's also more like education and outreach. And making sure the erosion and sediment control and stormwater management plans are in place, and educating like our employees on good good best practices to make sure our stormwater stays clean and everything like that. But does that kind of answer your questions?
Yeah, most definitely. Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, David. Great question. Just going through here, so it looks like someone had wrote, would my local stream cleaning team be good work experience? It is a volunteer experience. And anyone, feel free, Romy, Emily, or Augie.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say
I
yes.
thought that was going to be a resounding yes. I wanted to say yes, so.
If you
Awesome,
want
thanks.
more like how you would frame it, answer to that, that is perfect. That's beautiful. It's amazing. Throw that bad boy on your federal resume, and it's going to look very favorable for you, because what you're doing there is you're doing community outreach, you're doing things within the requirement of remediation already, and you're doing it in the community. That's the 3 big ticket main goals of our organization, and almost every organization that focuses on remediation. So you nailed it. It's beautiful. Continue to do it.
Thanks, Augie. Another question came through. Expected graduation month this year is around October 2025. So when is the right time to start applying for those internships? And I believe that's to the EPA internships.
Now.
Now.
Love it. Short and sweet, to the point, right now. Thanks,
Notices
guys.
come out roughly quarterly. You like put an alert on USA Jobs, have it sent to your email box, and then make sure that your federal resume is up to snuff, and you should be good.
Awesome. And Tyra just put in the chat too. There's a great video actually that we recently had with EPA representatives about getting your resume ready that this new career services team hosted not too long ago. It was all about getting your resume prepared for applying for those jobs through the usajobs.com and all these other really great insights. So feel free to hone that video, take a look at it, watch it back. It's super helpful. And like I said, we'll make sure that these links get included in that email blast after this recording as well. But that video has some really, really great insight as well. Another question, I know that someone had mentioned LinkedIn as far as like networking or having a professional profile, but does Indeed or other websites do a better job?
For the federal government, we use USA Jobs. LinkedIn is like a nice to have.
Awesome. Emily or Romy, any other sites? I'll put the USA Jobs in here too.
I think Indeed is still definitely like a good for like other jobs in general too. I was definitely on Indeed when I was applying and looking all over, and I was also on. I'm pretty sure I got my job through Monster actually, but I was on all the different ZipRecruiter. Like I was on USA Jobs too, but I was everywhere. So I think it's definitely Indeed still works too.
I gotta admit, between LinkedIn and USA Jobs, there's a lot of staff that post the job postings on their personal LinkedIn pages. So if you're connected with anybody, you still get them even if you're not connected with USA Jobs. But USA Jobs for the federal workforce, it makes it so much more easier because you can program those little email alerts. And you can also have the option of having your resume being searchable. The way I was explained USA Jobs, it's basically monsters.com on like hyperdrive, because it is such a kind of a in-depth process.
Thanks, y'all, for sharing. And again, we have some really great resources from the SNHU Career Services team about how to get your USA Jobs profile set up, with the steps to do that, some tips and tricks. So again, we'll make sure that those get shared out as well, because we know that navigating that can be a little bit daunting or a little confusing. So you just want to make sure your profile is ready to go. So we'll make sure to share some resources on that. And one final plug for LinkedIn too. I couldn't agree more. Especially Romy, you made a good point, and there are professional organizations that of course have their own LinkedIn profiles. And sometimes just following those companies are going to open up and lead you to opportunities you wouldn't know about. So, for example, I follow the National Park Service on LinkedIn and recently found out through they had posted on their profile that they're going to be hosting a careers webinar series on a monthly cadence to talk about careers in the National Park Service. And so just by simply following them, I got the alert right on my homepage on my profile. So again, I didn't navigate to their career website, didn't even sign up for email alerts. I just followed them through LinkedIn and was notified of that awesome event. So just another way to utilize LinkedIn for sure.
And Alyssa, I would add to that, like for example, I followed in the past the National Science Foundation, and I was actually fortunate enough to get a internship with them. So
awesome. Yep. LinkedIn is all around such a robust networking and career searching platform for all of the things. So can't recommend it enough, but absolutely exploring USA Jobs is definitely a good one too. Another question that came through, what is the age range for the majority of people first starting in their career with only a bachelor's degree?
What an amazing question. I got my bachelor's degree in, oh dear God, 2019. So that means I was 29. Because it took me like a decade, because I had military service. My compatriots within our cell, who was like the youngest, is 24, 23, and we have a tech support person who is 22. So the start of our journey, somewhere in our mid to late 20s. End of our journey, we just have someone retire who is very much past the normal retirement age. So we have what I like to call a generational retirement. We have huge blocks of retirement. Within the next 5 years, over 70% of the EPA workforce will be within the bounds of retirement. So we need more people like you all who are interested in the environment to replace us.
Awesome. Thanks, Augie. One more question I think came through for the EPA folks. It says, are EPA jobs super math heavy? Yes or no?
depends.
Tech support.
Yeah, we do have a tech support team that is very much enthralled in the mathematics. For my role, I do a little bit of math, but I also have the ability of not only relying on myself, but I have a team of people that would rely on that information that are also double checking that work. And that team, although it's another branch of the EPA agency, I definitely love the fact that there's somebody in this world that loves math. Because I am not one of those people.
Yeah, I second, third, and fourth that. I'm not a math person. I don't like it. I struggled in calculus, which is like not that high of math. I use tech support a lot and have them help me a lot. But most of the math that we do within our systems are applied. So it's not like I'm going to take this formula. It's more like I need this to be needs to be solved, and then I have individuals who know those particular formulas do the thing. So it's not like a high requirement of math is necessary for you to succeed.
All right, thanks everyone. I think we have time for just one final question, and it's actually I think the last one. I think this is a perfect one to end on. So, did you know what you wanted to do with your degree when you graduated?
Yes.
Emily or Romy, what about y'all?
I did not know. I thought I knew. I thought I was heading towards geology or structural geology, and then the math kind of scared me, so I backed out of that. And when I was at Virginia Soil and Water Conservation District, I did a lot of different things, and that's kind of actually how I discovered stormwater. They host something called Envirothon. So I was in charge of like helping write all the different study guides, and it covers 4 topics, and one of them was aquatics. And I found all of that stuff like super interesting and everything. And then we also like did different events that we'd go to, and we'd present an Enviroscape, which is like a 3D model of stormwater and how it works and everything. And I just fell in love with it, and that's how I ended up in stormwater. So
I would say yes, I already had known that I was going to stay within the environmental field, so yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're a little over time, but first and foremost, thank you to our amazing panelists for being with us this evening. We appreciate all of your wonderful advice, your tips, your insight. And for those in the audience, we hope that it was insightful for all of you as well. Just before we close for the evening, Tyra and I just wanted to highlight some upcoming relevant events that might be of interest to you for the month of April that the SNHU team is hosting. We've added a few of those links right here in the chat box for you, but we've got our SNHU Global Days of Service. So we talked a little bit about there are opportunities for you to get some volunteer experience. There are tons of community activities that are happening nationwide through SNHU Global Days of Service. So you can actually look at all the projects that are coming up and register to sign up. We also will be having a lecture on large volcanic eruptions and Earth's climate. We'll also be having a sustainability summit, which is really exciting, on April 8th. And then all of the month of April is actually SNHU's Internship Awareness Month. So if you are interested in exploring internship opportunities and want to find out more, we're hosting 3 different events in the month of April. So if you take a look at the link that I included in the chat, you can see which days are available, where you'll be able to attend and find out a little bit more. So with that, thank you all for being here this evening. Once again, panelists, thank you so much for your time. We truly, truly appreciate it. And we'll be sure to follow up to all those in attendance with, again, all the links that we talked about, links to the recording, as well as our panelists' contact information. So with that, I'll let everyone go for the evening. Thank you all again so much for being here. Truly appreciate it, and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the evening. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a nice night.
Thank you.